for a long time just thought, when I thought about psychedelics, I just thought drugs and they're bad, and everyone who does drugs is going to end up being a bum. And when I got to college, I was looking around me and I saw all these very interesting and intelligent kids who were experimenting with altered states of consciousness. So I was like, okay, there must be something to this. And when I attended Fadiman's talk, he really shed light to the many uses of these substances. And the next day, it just so happened that someone walked into a to where I was and offered me a portal to an altered state of consciousness, and I I accepted it, and I kind of fell into a little bit of the pitfall of the novel, or yeah, the juvenile psychonaut, in a sense, where I started making these I had these moments of, I guess, mini realizations, and I just so desperately wanted to I wanted what Fadiman was lecturing about to really apply to me. So I kind of overestimated the effects of this first encounter of mine with an altered state of consciousness. Um, and yeah, so I guess I kind of I created this story or a narrative in my head where I was like, well, I just tried I had some mushrooms and now I'm healed of my anxiety. I'm completely healed. And it took me quite a few years to realize that yeah, that's not how it works.
Welcome to Season 4, Episode 4 of Ouroboros Story Hour, True Tales of Healing in Altered States. I'm your host and producer, Bob Cohen. I'm a dad, writer, teacher, and bluesman. When I'm not driving myself and everyone else nuts, I'm busy writing poetry, singing the blues, and working on a memoir about the blessings of clogged arteries and an unplanned financial catastrophe. Ouroboros Story Hour is an international monthly unscripted storytelling production that presents humans sharing stories about their experiences with healing and visionary plants, psychedelics, and other consciousness hacking practices. Our mission is to promote deep healing and radical acceptance of ourselves and others by sharing and witnessing people's stories. Story Hour is for educational purposes and is a substance-free event. We do not advocate the use of illegal substances, nor do we provide opportunities for people to obtain them. We practice unscripted long-form storytelling. This works best when you're able to set aside some space for it and for you to give your thinking mind a rest and simply just listen with an open heart. And because this is long-form storytelling, we give them the space they need to discover their truths. So kick back, relax, and let the magic unfold. Haya Al-Hejailan. So she's calling in from France, which is way cool. She's an enthusiastic advocate of psychedelic literacy who intends to help catalyze the psychedelic movement globally. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and wrote her senior thesis entitled Ask Your Doctor if Psychedelics Are Right for You, a closer look at the clinical use of psychedelics. She's currently studying for a master's degree in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology and is conducting her research on the use of psychedelics during the pandemic, observing if there's a correlation between psychedelic use and well-being.
So thank you for sharing that your stories with us, Bob. It's really informative, and it's very nice to hear from you too. So yeah, I just want to say thanks for sharing with us. And yeah, I guess I a lot of what you were saying really resonated with me. And I feel like I've been evolving quite a bit over the past few years, in terms of how I view plant medicine and healing with plant medicine. When I first got started, I was 19, so this was about 7 years ago. I my first um, my first interaction with this psychedelic space, I guess, was during in this was October 2013, and I had attended a talk by James Fadiman titled "The Psychedelic Renaissance," and I was just completely I was completely flabbergasted by how much substance these substances had. No pun intended, but yeah. I mean, I for a long time just thought, when I thought about psychedelics, I just thought drugs and they're bad, and everyone who does drugs is going to end up being a bum. And when I got to college, I was looking around me and I saw all these very interesting and intelligent kids who were experimenting with altered states of consciousness. So I was like, okay, there must be something to this. And when I attended Fadiman's talk, he really shed light to the many uses of these substances. And the next day, it just so happened that someone walked into a to where I was and offered me a portal to an altered state of consciousness, and I I accepted it, and I kind of fell into a little bit of the pitfall of the novel, or yeah, the juvenile psychonaut, in a sense, where I started making these I had these moments of, I guess, mini realizations, and I just so desperately wanted to I wanted what Fadiman was lecturing about to really apply to me. So I kind of overestimated the effects of this first encounter of mine with an altered state of consciousness. Um, and yes, I guess I kind of I created this story or a narrative in my head where I was like, well, I just tried I had some mushrooms, and now I'm healed of my anxiety. I'm completely healed. And it took me quite a few years to realize that yeah, that's not how it works. And So that was my first experience with a psychedelic. And guess what I want to point to in the story that I'm telling today is that these tools are super powerful, and they're very important, and they can really help you with transcending. But also there can be times in which they can be used irresponsibly, which can have really detrimental effects, and that's the bad part of it. So and I think you said something that really resonated with me, which is that without without intention and without integration, it's just kind of another drug experience, or another, just another experience. So it's important for one to set out an intention, and to also do some type of integration work, which I feel like I've been kind of lacking with. But yeah, so one of the most profound experiences I had was a another time in the same year. I was in Washington State. At the Do you know where the gorge is? So where
Which gorge?
it's called you know where Sasquatch is? I forgot what it's called, but it's a gorge in near Seattle. So I had um I had another experience with an altered state of consciousness, and it began with me um going into like another dimension that was very space like. And I just remember I just remember it being very intense, and I closed my eyes, and I laid my head on the table, and there were just all these masks and faces that were they were just coming at me very violently. And the more I peered into it, or the more interest I took looking at it, I realized that these are all the voices that I kind of um, internalized, and they were all playing out to me. So all these different um, voices of people telling me all these negative things that don't define me, but that I've kind of taken on to define me, in a sense. They were just coming at me, and every few minutes there was something I couldn't identify what it was, but there was some alien like creature that would just grab me and throw me out into space. And that happened a few times, and it was quite unpleasant. And then after that kind of eased me into crying, and I generally have a hard time with crying, so altered states of consciousness really allow me to emotionally purge. So I ended up bawling my eyes out for like 15 minutes. And after that, I experienced a sense of zen that's ineffable. I cannot put it into words, but I was just walking by the canyons, and I felt like I was traveling through the canyons, and I was just everywhere. And I just got this experience of I kind of understood. I had this moment of understanding, like an epiphany, where I realized that I am the universe, and the universe is me, and everyone around me is the universe. And I just remember there's this one word that I really love, and altered states of consciousness really helped me understand it. The word is sonder, and sorry, did you lose me there? Hello.
We're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the word sonder is it's an emotion in which you realize that everyone around you has a subjective reality that's just as vivid as yours. And that was something that I truly felt in these altered states of consciousness. I just remember thinking back to everyone I had ever met, and I just had this deep fascination and this deep curiosity, um, and I had this deep sense of like I was very driven to connect with everyone who I had ever met, and everyone around me just seemed to be. I couldn't really tell where I began and where people around me ended, or began or ended. Like I couldn't tell where I began and where I ended, and how and where the people around me began and ended too. So it was just a very beautiful experience, and it was really really healing. And I just remember like just thinking to myself like after the experience, like if there is one way for me to describe this experience, it's really it's the um epitome of zen, or it's synonymous with serenity. And it came after bawling my eyes out for 15 minutes, and letting like really purging everything that I kind of suppressed for years. And this was just it was just really healing, and I carried it on for carried it stayed with me for a very long time. And even till this day, 6 years later, I think back to it, and I can vividly experience some bits of it. But the important part is to what I should have done back then, and what I should be more strict about doing, or more adamant about doing in the future, is really focusing on the integration. Um, because I feel like looking back, I could have had a lot more benefits post experience had I really sat with the experience and journaled about it and spoken to. I don't think back then there were really that many integration specialists available, but today a simple Google search will generate multiple results. So that's why I strongly encourage anyone who is exploring this territory um, to really look and educate themselves about the resources that are available. And just on a final note, I just want to say that there are. I mean, I've had experiences with altered states of consciousness where I wasn't prepared or I wasn't ready, and it was really traumatizing. And I remember going to therapy and telling my therapist like I had this horrible experience, and I'm super disoriented. I don't know what to do, and she used to work with maps, and I remember her recommendation to me was to go and have another altered state of consciousness experience. So, um, but a careful. I mean, a one that's more carefully designed and more intentional and purposeful. So yeah, I think it's really important for us to be very careful with our use of tools that help us access altered states of consciousness. So I think I kind of gave a little bit of a general overview of the good and the bad, and going on to the neutral, I'd like to talk just very quickly about the work that I'm doing currently. So I'm doing my master's right now, and I'm looking at I'm looking at whether or not there is a relationship between psychedelic use and people's ability to cope with COVID related stressors. And aside from that, I'm also co-producing a documentary called the Psychedelic Renaissance documentary. Um, and in the future, I'm really interested in perhaps exploring psychedelics in treating more complicated psychiatric conditions, especially personality disorders. So that's something that I hope that in the future I'll be able to perhaps work with a team in exploring integrating psychedelics with some with models of treatment that already exist, such as dialectical behavioral therapy and other such therapies that focus on treating personality disorders, which are very much rooted in trauma.